Before getting into this video, I just want to say that for the past few videos, I've been trying a few different styles, so let me know if you like this style of content and I can keep it up in the future. So today I want to talk about something that irks me both as a consumer and a creator of games, and that's how these big companies and studios have been pumping out pure slop of games, more especially in the past year. Examples such as Forspoken, Redfall, and the Callisto Protocol. These games, which are hyped up a lot by their publishers, and because of the misleading hype, got a lot of pre-orders. And then when the games finally came out, people were disappointed in the disaster that was created. Some people held on to hope for some of these games, which worked out in some other cases, such as Cyberpunk.
Did you see what happened? Something feels off here.
You don't say.
In No Man's Sky, where the game's expectation was worse than what was released, but later on down the line, the developers put some time in and patched up or added everything that they promised originally, helping fix their reputation at least a little. Sadly for these recent games though, they haven't really been getting the same treatment, and now have been getting bad karma, such as the Forspoken devs being merged back into Square Enix, basically forgetting Forspoken ever existed and moving on to the next slot project. The funniest thing about all of this to me is that some of the best games this year have just been remakes of old great games, or in some cases, sequels of previously well-performing games. My only pet peeve with the sequels is that a lot of them just feel like a DLC or an expansion to the original game, not really adding anything new. This may be a controversial opinion, but games like Spider-Man Miles Morales, God of War Ragnarok, and the Nintendo shills are gonna hate me for this one, but Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, they're all games which, don't get me wrong, are great, but it feels like these companies are just getting more and more lazy as years go by. Trust me, I know you really want to play the latest Call of Duty, but they still haven't added the G36C assault rifle to the game like the Warzone players have apparently been begging for. A great example of a game that made a sequel and really added on to the world of gameplay is Risk of Rain. Both the original and the sequel are granted similar by both being roguelikes with similar enemies, but when the second game came out they switched up from being 2D and practically rebuilt the game up from the bottom as a 3D world with a stronger story behind the game. Moving back onto the topic though, it really looks like these companies just don't care about the players' enjoyment anymore. They just see that their games are being pre-ordered by their fan base with no real decline in profits. So, like Todd Howard says, it just works, it just works. Now, a big factor I've seen a lot of people talk about with the decline of games is because of the game engine known as Unreal Engine. To give a brief insight, this is a very powerful game engine developed by Epic Games, everyone's favorite marketplace that loves to buy games into becoming Epic Games exclusives. Anyway, more recently, the latest version of Unreal Engine came out, that being UE5. This is basically the 5th generation of the engine since its debut with Unreal Tournament, then changing their flagship game to Fortnite once UE4 came out, and they've been updating it ever since. With the transition to UE5 birthed some amazing new technologies, with the two main ones being Nanite and Lumen. These two are amazing, but the short version is that they're very appealing as Nanite helps with model optimization and Lumen helps with lighting optimization. Because of that, a lot of studios began to consider switching their games from UE4 to UE5, which means a lot of time would be allocated to updating those old versions' assets so they can take advantage of the newer technologies. Because of that, a lot of studios began to consider switching their games from UE4 to UE5, which meant a lot of time would be allocated to updating those old versions' assets so they can take advantage of the newer technologies. Only issue is that due to Epic's marketing on how Nanite can handle millions of polygons at once, utilizing ray tracing technology with minimal FPS loss, a lot of studio directors and developers thought it would be as simple as dragging and dropping your model of Shrek into your GTA 5 remake, but alas, it's not that simple, and still requires a lot of manual work to make sure assets, models, and textures work well together with these new features, so no issues are caused. Unreal 5 itself had a fairly buggy release, and as soon as it came out, people were jumping on every UE5 game to come out as soon as possible, with releases like Stalker 2 making delays, and fans wanting their game now. Please, just wait and let them cook. Other studios such as Striking Distance Studios, who made the Callisto Protocol, managed to scrape the Lumen lighting system from UE5 and reverse engineered it into UE4. They decided to go this route as their teams were forced into crunch hours and had a short time limit until release without any delays, so they had to use this workaround as there'd be no time to update everything into UE5. Because of everything being so rushed, this is one of the reasons that the Calypso Protocol ended up having such terrible performance, with the game itself being okay at best. With all the hype surrounding Unreal Engine 5, this also got a lot of indie devs excited to make some really cool and good looking games with a much smaller budget. But in turn, this also ended up creating a trend where people would make videos titled X but in Unreal Engine 5. A couple of examples to list which you may have seen appear in your YouTube recommended in the past, such as Superman Earth-sized open world game in Unreal Engine 5 fan concept buzzword buzzword buzzword. Or what about GTA 6 but in Unreal Engine 5? Or even Breaking Bad open world game but in Unreal Engine 5.
Hey Jess, how was the sale today?
A lot of these videos were just pure clickbait and mostly pre-rendered animated scenes, not really showcasing how much of a beefy PC you'd need to run something this high quality. Anyway, because of videos like those, this resulted in the bloated releases of games that have the AAA quality visuals that could be produced from your home with no extra costs. That ended up backfiring as people just became less and less impressed by the level of quality these games had, which then created a standard for what games should be. With examples such as Only Up, that game may have skyrocketed to the top of Twitch very fast, but fundamentally in terms of performance, the game is terribly made. The big studios didn't really do anything to help either, as to them the easily made graphics seemed like it would be great. So when they ended up trying to make those games, they ended up having poor management and ended up being under the impression that it would be easy for us to make games. A lot of botched titles, such as the previously mentioned Forspoken and Redfall, started development in UE4, but publishers and executives are trying to fit with the trend of every game in UE5, so they ended up forcing their workforce to convert everything over to UE5 when everything was already going smoothly and working perfectly fine on UE4, meaning they basically had to redo practically everything already made up to that point. I have a friend who works as a freelance 3D artist, and he told me about this one gig he worked on. The team he was on was told to update from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5, and on the back end it was incredibly messy. Since his contract was under NDA, he isn't allowed to tell me what studio it was, but at the very least he can say that the waiting for the transfer resulted in a week of the studio practically being inactive, trying to transfer everything to UE5 without testing other assets in other branches of production. Their versioning system would not be able to roll back to UE4 if any issues arose due to server overload, which is very bad for productivity. Luckily, they were able to fix the issues, but that was because they had to do overtime, so not very fun. Taking a look at an example where a developer decided to stick to UE4 until the end rather than going with a crowd, Atomic Heart,
oh my god, please dominate me,
being made by an indie developer, not a AAA studio, was a fundamentally good game, and being able to look at the game and enjoy its performance, minus the launch day bugs that softlock people from continuing the story, it had been packaged and composed very carefully many times. To explain what I mean, you can make a project in any engine and have a lot of files, textures, assets, whatever you stuck in your folders, and if they're referenced, they would also end up being in the game's files when it's shipped, which is how data miners are able to look into files and see models and textures that nobody could see in any level and then post them on Twitter, Discord, or even 4chan. But not really with Atomic Heart, as the game was well packaged and tidied up, as if they made another project, copied only the files they used in their levels of the bloated project, and went through a heavy optimization pass. It really sucks that not a lot of people really talk about this, because AAA Western studios could really learn a lot from this. But now we're just getting same mistakes after same mistakes, like not releasing a game with an option to cache your shaders. Shaders are data files that essentially explain how to render their models, like how much light would be absorbed or spread depending on how the artist and developer makes it, resulting in either a photorealistic look in which everything is physically correct, or a more stylized look with outlines and shaded toony shadows. Those files are detrimental to make the game look and operate well, and there should be an option for any game to allow to prepare those files in advance to reduce loading times and get rid of any hitches in the games. The Callisto Protocol, however, was probably most infamous with this issue, and even more so, it was a sin to not include this option on a PC version, while console versions had that built in. Games nowadays are constantly evolving, and with industry deals happening everywhere, especially within Microsoft, there are also losses to their own investments. For example, Microsoft decided for 343 games that they wanted to stop development of a franchise on their in-house engine. Microsoft is now switching from in-house tools to Unreal 5, which makes a lot of people expect that there will be better games if they're made in Unreal 5. The market is big, and there are so many other options people can choose that aren't just the mainstream engine like Unreal, but maybe something like Unity, although that's probably more for people who prefer pain and suffering. The same thing can be said about the Godot engine, but so far the only game that we know that plays on the Godot engine is Cruelty Squad. I saw this one guy make a review about the whole game. It took him about 8 months to make. I'm not sure how, since the video is only about 4 hours long.
You'll here to check out my Chunko Pops? I'm absolutely nuts about these guys. Must have spent over 100,000 on them by now. Do you have a favorite? Me? It's rather hard to choose. They're all my children. Man, it's so nice to meet another Chunko enthusiast.
Everyone recently has just been obsessed over quality. Games like Hellblade 2, where you can barely tell it's a game anymore, and just a cinematic experience. It is incredibly easy to create your own virtual productions using Unreal, and Epic just doesn't stop pumping out support. But it's only accelerated this year, and a lot of indie developers benefit from it, while big studios really want special treatment from Epic and their Unreal engineers to help them develop what they want on a limited time. It's never an engine that's a problem to the final product of game, but management's greed to save money and time and giving unrealistic deadlines to their developers without doing proper research of how the development could be smoothed out before handing over to a main project. Investors are so easily impressionable and will toss money at anything that looks realistic, which is the most hated buzzword at this point. Only a poor craftsman can blame their tools. Now, before I end off this video, I just want to say that I know some of the games coming out this year, or have already come out, are great, but notice this. A lot of those games are either indie games or remakes, and if this trend of AAA studios getting lazier and lazier keeps up, we could see a massive decline. Maybe we should just stick to supporting indie devs instead of waiting for big studios just to make things worse. Anyway, thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. Make sure to do all the YouTube things to help boost the video in the algorithm, and let me know your thoughts about AAA studios and if you think I got anything wrong. Also, feel free to join the Discord and talk about games or something, I don't know. So, yeah.